I was saying this is the first time I am interviewing an Amazonian.
Ma'am, that's very nice to hear. काफी special लग रहा है. But ma'am, I really wanted to do an interview with you. मतलब meet के बाद भी, but I think it didn't work out. Yes.
We are live?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Let's sort this once. Okay. Yeah. So hello everyone, good afternoon, and I'm very happy today to have a fellow Amazonian, an Amazonian junior with me, and Dr. Anshul Gupta has scored an amazing rank 7 this time in INI, and you had a great NEET PG rank as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't talk to you during that time, but I am very glad that we can now finally interact. So big congratulations, and I'm so happy and thrilled at your success. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm feeling absolutely amazing. And before the exam, I was very nervous. But then after the exam, I had a gut feeling that it had gone well. And I'm very happy that it turned out this way. And I'm very thankful to you, ma'am, because you have been an integral part of my preparation, particularly in the last 3 months, because this is the time when I actually went on full gear. And I really needed a resource, a certain kind of resource. And your resources fit in exactly in that kind. So I'm very happy. And I really wanted to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. So before we jump into the final 3 months, take me through, your MBBS first of all. Were you a good student? How much did you study? And then how did you manage your revision in internship?
Yes, ma'am. So I started making my notes for PG preparation in my 3rd year. Before that, in my 1st and 2nd year, I only read the standard books which our seniors usually suggest. So I went through those books. I didn't go for any coaching material. In 3rd year, I started watching the videos. I started making my notes, and I was able to complete the notes for almost all subjects by the end of my final year. Okay. And then in internship, my goal was to, complete the notes of all the subjects which I hadn't done and to revise what I had noted down. So internship was all about the memorizing part, which was the main thing. So unfortunately, during my internship, I was not able to cope with the hectic internship along with this well enough. So I did not do so well in the November INICET. That was my first attempt wherein I got a rank of 715. Okay. And then I was a little bit disheartened, but then that, around the time when I came to know about the BTR course and the MERS, first of all, it made me understand the one very unique point about the MERS is that they are very specific about must-know topics, and they're only focusing on those topics and then dissecting them through and through in entire depth. So I realized that is how one should study. So yes, ma'am. After that, I just revised. I went in like full gear and I studied a lot and basically was able to revise 3 times before the exam.
Okay. So after your November attempt, what changed? Like what strategy changed apart from like knowing that we need to focus on certain topics more than, rather than completing everything?
Yes.
Like per se, subject wise, what did you do differently? Were you focusing on MCQs or you were revising the same material, but now with a different perspective?
So, ma'am, first of all, I think I was much more goal-oriented in my time after November INICET because I realized when my friends got a really good top 10 ranks, I asked them what they were doing. And they said that you need to have a very specific timeline, a very specific goal. And a timeline means that you have to decide when you will complete your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd revisions. So I think that was one major change. The next change was that I started focusing, like you said, more on PYQs. And from those, I used to glean what the must-know topics are. And then I used to go to my notes and read them with that emphasizing more on the PYQ topics. But at the same time, also reading, the peripheral things which are given in the notes. So I used to read them cover to cover in my first reading because I intrinsically have a lot of FOMO. And I think that is what took me down in November. Because I went for everything, right? But this time I thought my graph shouldn't be like a flat line everywhere I'm having like equal knowledge. I should have spikes of knowledge where it's important. And maybe if it's not important, I should have a trough there. So that is how my preparation should be. And that is what I tried to implement. So I remember making a separate PDF of like all the MER topics which are there, the 65 topics that are there. And I integrated them with the separate subject-wise topics so that I could complete a subject and at the same time do the MER topics of that subject simultaneously. And those pointers or those topics would serve as my last minute revision. So I used to integrate some other stuff also into that and make it a wholesome source. And that is what I did towards the end. So it worked out very well. So yes, that is the second thing I did, focusing more on must knows. and not a whole blanket coverage of the subject.
Correct. I think that's what I also tried to do with my online BTR, and I think I remember you dropping a message asking whether I should take that or I should revise the old MOS. So that is what
Yes,
I
ma'am.
tried to do with BTR, was bring it subject wise and bring it all together. So did you see that eventually?
Yes, ma'am. I saw the entire thing and I saw it. Literally binge watched it like it was Netflix because it was so interesting. And I watched it at a time when I had already gone through the syllabus 2 times. That was around the time it was launched around 20th of April. So I already had a basic idea of what everything is. So I just wanted those highlights or those must know things which I cannot miss for the exam. So that is where BTR came in. And like I said, I'm a very former driven person. So I read a lot of lateral stuff. I read national guidelines on stroke and stuff like that, and I go on and reading it. And in the end, like I do come to know a lot of other things, but then I sort of miss out on the main story or what will be asked. So that is why a BTR like course was very important for me, which made me focus more on the things which are very likely to be asked. So, and obviously it brings everything together because I watched it. And I used to open the notes along that I found particularly difficult to remember. I would pause the video and try to do active recall of that table. So like for me, it was like कि BTR में जो दिया है वो तो आना ही चाहिए. उसके बाद ठीक है मुझे अगर और आता है it's advantageous, but इतना तो आना चाहिए. So that was how I used the BTRs.
Good. That was the whole idea why I started this. कि पहले इतना master कर लो and then keep adding on to it. That is the whole idea for all of the juniors also are watching. It's not, people ask me ये enough है, ये enough. I mean that question, I'm so tired of it. It's basically you master this and you keep adding on to it. That's how you make it more wholesome basically. So
yes,
I
ma'am.
did it perfectly as how I intended it, and I'm very happy that you got the result that you did. Take me through your exam giving strategy. Like, do you go in with a preconceived notion or you're like कि one MCQ at a time देखेंगे?
So ma'am, actually जब मैंने आपका पहली बार NEET के पहले वीडियो देखा था about exam taking strategy, I realized कि there were so many things in that which I was already doing, and I was like, okay, now everyone knows this, and then the same thing happened for INICET too. But it made me realize कि कहीं ना कहीं this is the right way to give the paper. So I'll answer your question. I went one by one for the MCQs. Every question for me was an independent question, and even every option was an independent statement. I never tried to have the X wala feeling of the previous question or something. And yes, ma'am. And secondly, I also try to make a lot of educated guesses even in my GTs, because I think that gives you the kind of practice. Like even while doing PYQs, I used to do it like a test, even then when doing for the first time, because I think it builds a certain MCQ solving ability, which will come only by doing this thing, active solving of MCQs. And this helped me in the exam because even for those questions which I did not really know or I had no idea about the options, I was able to like logically think कि ये हो सकता है, ये नहीं हो सकता, and therefore this might be the right answer. So there were a lot of instances of that sort. Like even the dye question which came this time, I just had an idea that Rose Bengal is very irritative and fluorescein is used for tear film breakup time. So I had guessed कि maybe fluorescein first hoga, Rose Bengal last hoga. So like things like this, they sometimes work out. And that is what I came to know from your videos only, how to take the paper. And lastly, I think that one should not go with a preconceived notion of how many to attempt. Although I did go with the notion that I'll attempt 195 around. But then, the paper was slightly a bit of a bouncer. So because of that preconceived notion that I had, I ended up attempting 194. But I would not recommend that really, because I think I was a bit lucky, because you should attempt only as many as you think the toughness of the paper allows. Like ideally in this paper would have been maybe 187 or something, 185. So yes, I kind of over attempted. But yes, ma'am, that is the thing, that you should not go with a preconceived notion about how many to solve.
So like if we want to dissect this paper, because this paper was pretty unique in the sense that it was crazier than usual. AIMS papers will have 10 odd questions which are crazy, which nobody would want to know also, but this time I think that number was probably plus 10 if not more, so out of the 200 questions, people think ki sare aane chahiye first of all topper ko, which is completely bullshit, which is not true, ki kisi ko sare questions nahi aate. Out of the 200 questions, like from you, because you're top 10, tell me कि कितने questions तुम्हें आते थे जो सही हुए, कितने आने चाहिए थे but गलत हुए, like silly mistakes which people like to call, and how many were very difficult and you left them, so what was your breakup of the actual exam, and how many bankable questions did you get wrong actually?
Okay. So ma'am, this stands true for my NEET exam as well as my INICET. मुझे NEET के बाद ये चीज actually realize हुई थी अच्छे से कि the bank questions, you cannot get them wrong. I mean, you have to get them right, and that is why when I was giving the paper, I was literally perspiring because I was so fixated on the question that I should not miss even a single word or a single
Yeah.
line that is given, and that is why I made very few mistakes in bank questions. For example, I think the only few mistakes that I made, one was puberty menorrhagia, where I chose bleeding disorders, which obviously I knew it wasn't right, but I think I jumbled up that in some way. So like that was one of the questions which I got wrong, but I got very few bank questions wrong. Mainly मेरी गलती जो हुई थी in my first go through the paper, I had around 20 minutes left and I had marked around 34 questions for review. I had written them on a piece of paper. So I would say that the ones that I had attempted, 166, I think those were the questions which I felt कि मुझे पहली बार में I was able to guess them. फिर उसके बाद the 34 that were remaining, they were mostly from PSM Opthal this time because these were the two subjects which were very weirdly asked. Also pharma. So those were the subjects that were left. So to give you a breakup, I attempted 194 and I got around 175, 176 correct as per recalls, and I had around 19 questions wrong and I left 6. So that was the breakup.
Okay, so mostly you got questions wrong from the 34. I think the ones that you had review, that those were your wrong ones mostly. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds fair enough. I think that's how, the paper should be attempted. Most of the people, when they do not do well, it's from those 130 or 120 questions, which you are supposed to know, which are literally like BTR, not taught in BTR, but like which are literally BTR topics, So that is, I think that should be the usual breakup. One more last question, because I'm curious, like when you gave the exam in November and when you gave NEET and AIMS, how do you think your mindset was it different? Were you going in with a different approach both the times? Had you learned something from your November exam attempt?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, in November, I will accept that I was underprepared because, like I stated, because of my internship, I was not able to cope well. But then, when I went for the paper, I went with a very free mind because when you don't prepare well, you're like, "Ki theek hai, dikha jayega," and that is what I went with. So, very funnily, I got a lot of tricky questions in that paper correct, but I got the easy ones wrong. I remember doing the lung carcinoma IHC markers wrong. That mistake always haunts me. And there were a lot of anatomy questions that I got wrong because simply for the fact that I hadn't revised it well. So I was very sad because of this very reason. I hadn't given my best attempt and I had gotten the easy questions wrong. So that is why when I gave my NEET exam, I was again not adequately. I was like 80%, 90% prepared, but the rest was all the BTRs. So even before NEET exam, I had a similar mindset. But then I told myself, I'm not going to get any easy question wrong. And I think that is what worked for me. But again, in NEET, I went with a freer mindset as compared to INICET because again, I thought कि इतना prepared मैं नहीं हूँ, so we'll see what happens. And also because INICET was my main focus, so that was my mental state when I went for NEET. So it was little bit relaxed. I remember reading the IPCs outside the examination center. Development was very different. I was stressed for the last. Kept my iPad open and kept looking at it. So the stress levels were running very high on the day of the exam. But I just went back to my previous exams. कि ऐसा क्या difference था कि मुझे उसमें इतना stress नहीं हुआ. And I realized it was just because I was not going with a preset thing कि I have to get a top 10 rank. Because that builds a lot of pressure. So ma'am, yes, the difference in May, I actively tried to suppress those thoughts which were making me overthink or making me nervous, and I just tried to give my best attempt for every single question that came in the paper. So I basically followed everything that you have said in your YouTube videos about exam taking, ma'am.
Why I'm probing so much is because your journey and my journey are very similar, like apart from the institute, in my November attempt, I went in with a lot of pressure. Even though I was like decently prepared, I went in with a lot of pressure because AIMS se hai aur saath wale log wo pressure dalte hain. Were you a topper like in your MBBS or no? You had other toppers in your batch?
Ma'am, so I wasn't exactly a topper, but I used to be somewhere in the top 15 because कभी-कभी मैं पढ़ लेता था, कभी-कभी नहीं. It was very variable.
मेरा भी same ही था, but then others had put a lot of pressure. So, my mindset, why I asked you particularly, was very different. And I learned from every exam. And I get a feeling that you did the same. After every exam, you came out of the hall thinking ki, this is what I had to do differently and which I didn't, So that's why I was, trying to get that. So amazing. And I'm so happy and thrilled,
There's one more thing I want to point out here. Like you said, our journeys were similar, although that's I'm honored to be hearing that. But ma'am, I actually had a piece of paper on which my mom asked me to write my goals so that I'm able to focus better. And usme jo maine goal likha tha na, usme I had written in one place ki Zainab Bora and a couple of other seniors of mine, Adarsh Pal, Sanil, who
Yeah.
these were all people who had not done so well in November. I mean,
Yeah.
आपकी तो फिर भी बहुत अच्छी थी, but वैसे, and then I looked at their May ranks, which were way better. So that served as a motivation for me every day, because I was like, if they can do it, then I can also reduce these 3 digits to 1 maybe. So
Yeah.
that was definitely a motivation for me, and I still have that paper somewhere at my home.
Amazing. So kudos to your mom for making you do that. Because
Yes, ma'am.
manifestation, I think, is so important. In manifestation, बहुत लोग use करते हैं cliched way में, but I feel that translates to belief कि कर सकते हैं, because that is where it all starts कि हाँ हो सकता है, inside when you get that feeling and affirmation कि हाँ I can also do it. That's how it starts. So amazing, Anshul, and I'm so happy to be talking to you. Anything else that you want to tell your juniors who are listening to this? What to do correctly? What should they learn from your journey?
Ma'am, I think the one mistake that I made, they should never read everything like a blanket coverage of the syllabus.
Yeah.
They should always have the knowledge. Like I say it in spikes, where you should have very, very deep knowledge about commonly asked topics. Go and read the guidelines if you have to, national guidelines. Like I remember that one where you have talked about blood transfusion and you have gone from literally A to Z. And I really love that. And that is also the way I would have studied if I didn't have like a ready-made resource from you. So I would tell all my juniors to, have high depth of knowledge in such important topics, but they can also ignore topics which are not frequently asked.
Yeah.
Because even if a question comes from those, it won't be rank deciding.
Yeah.
So that would be my one advice to.
So be selective and be smart, about this process. You just stuck for a bit. Yeah. Amazing. All right. So
Yes, ma'am.
great talking to you. Great insights. And thank you so much for that nostalgia also, in your journey, I see myself and wishing you a lot of success in your journey ahead. What are you planning to take now?
Ma'am, I'll probably take medicine. That is the thought for now, but I'm going to think about it more in the coming days.
Yes. Try and I was listening to one of the interviews. Try and rule out branches rather than rule in branches. That's a better
Yes.
that's a better process to have. कि this I can't do. This I can never do. Like gynae was a complete rule out for me, that this I can't do for the life of me. So follow that process and take an informed decision, because this stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All the best, and hopefully I'll see you soon. And
Yes,
when you
ma'am.
come back, do let me know.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm honored, ma'am. Thank you.
All the best, Anshul. Bye.